Afternoon, Tim. How you doing?
Good afternoon, Shabbar. I'm good. Apparently, my nose is a bit red. I've just got over my cold, but I'm all right.
You're okay.
How are you?
Uh, I'm very well. I'm very
Good.
well. We've had a couple of high temperature sort of candidates at home who have
Uh,
been feeling a bit under the weather, and yeah, it's just that time of year. I think it's getting
mm,
cold, and then suddenly gets a little bit milder, and then it gets cold, and schools are a breeding ground for this as well. So there's obviously a lot of bugs in the air, but today I wanted to bring something in which has been bugging me. Good link, good link.
yeah.
And so in my line of work, being a financial advisor, we're helping people build wealth and invest for the future. And there's this idea that we're sort of helping them towards financial freedom. You know, it's a real buzzword that we use within my world. And also on LinkedIn, when I'm sort of doing, a little bit of sort of social media stuff, the number of sort of business owners who are sort of, let's call them gurus or whatever we want to call entrepreneurs, they always talk about, scaling your business or building that income stream because that's going to give you freedom. So I see
Right.
this word freedom, thrown around, thrown around a lot. And I'm like, the more we talk and the more work I do around this, I'm like, okay, can money actually give you freedom? And is this a bit of a lie? Is this a bit of a misunderstanding? So I want to go down this road, if you don't mind today.
No, sounds great. Sounds great. Yeah, well, let's dive in. All right. Let me remind everyone listening that one of the places this work starts, because what we're doing and the work this comes from, the work I do, the work Peter Koenig kind of originated. It's going deeper than we normally do in money conversations, and deeper than even I think most money podcasts are still not as deep as they could be. So one of the phrases we use is detective work. Let's just get really curious. Anytime I'm dealing with a part of my money story, or I hear someone else's money story, or I see a post on LinkedIn that winds me up, I've always got the opportunity for reflect about, okay, what might that be mirroring back to about my money process? Because that's what we're not normally conscious of. So I don't think today is about necessarily digging into your work, but let's start with what bugs you. If I just say, well, so what? People can talk about financial freedom. Maybe that's helpful. Maybe it's not helpful for you. Maybe you and me are interested in something different. But what bugs you about it?
It's not so much as well, yeah, because I did say it does bug me. I'm not sure whether it's true anymore. I used to believe that
Mm,
money would bring you freedom, but the more that
right.
we have these conversations and the more we sort of go
Mm,
down this rabbit hole, it's really unpacking, well, is this accurate? And are people falling into this trap of believing that money is going to give you freedom? Because it also feels a little bit sad if money gives you freedom, because isn't sort of freedom just an inherent human right as opposed to it being acquired? So I think it's just for me unpacking, just so that in my conversations with clients, I don't feel like I'm misleading them down this route of, money equals financial freedom, but also I want to have more conversations with people who are raising this and just help them and myself to just like, can we take a step back and just actually look at this? Because I,
mm,
I think that the world is caught up in this idea that money
excellent.
money equals this or money
Yeah.
equals that. And
Yeah.
I don't think that's serving us very well. So
Mm.
it's just to clarify, what do we mean by freedom, and what does money actually give us, which we might be confusing with freedom?
Mm.
That's
Wow.
that's all.
All right. So you sort of said a couple of things. One is which I agree and we're exploring. Society in general tends to, money gets you this, and maybe it doesn't, or maybe we could investigate more. And then one of the things that keeps coming up, it seems, in LinkedIn and financial advisor, entrepreneur circles is what it gets you is freedom, because other people might say it gets you something else, status, or so we can look at both. So let's look at freedom. And then you said, well, is it accurate? Is it a trap? And I think it's really worth having that as an open question, because otherwise the danger is we go one of two ways. If we just follow the conventional logic and we get sucked into LinkedIn and social media and all of these influencers and we would be in danger of just assuming, oh yeah, look, look how many cars they've got and look how great their holidays are and look how happy they look in that photo. They're free and I don't feel free, so yeah, I should have that money, right? That's more or less the conventional, we might say, projection. And of course, we've talked about this projection idea previously. It's worth realizing that an awful lot of our very superficial modern culture, and certainly a lot of very superficial social media, is designed deliberately or not deliberately to activate those projections. What do I mean? If you've just sold your business for 20 million or 100 million or 200 million or whatever, and you're sitting there, as many founders do, I know because I get to coach them, going, oh my God, that was the most brutal 18 months of my life exiting. It was incredibly painful. I feel slightly traumatized. I'm not sure if I've done the right thing. I mean, yeah, I've got a load of money, but if you're sitting there or you're feeling just, you're not sure what your life's about anymore, or you're realizing you've been running on adrenaline in order to make that money for the last 15 years and now you don't know who you are. The point is, typically you don't put that on a social media post. But it doesn't mean it's not going on. So before we dive into a deeper level, the freedom thing, it's just worth remembering where this message comes from and who's echoing it and whose interest is it that it gets echoed. I'm not saying they're bad people, but it probably serves these people, if they're advisors or so-called gurus or whoever, to have people either want more money for financial freedom or think that person has freedom. They have what I want. That,
yeah.
Am I being unfair?
No, I think it's just part of life that if you're selling something and you're saying that the answer to the big problem that you have is this, and you've got the solution, you're going to push that solution as the way forward. And you'll speak to one person who's like, it's all about personal brand, and another person, it's like all about video, and another person, it's all about writing. And it's like, well, they're obviously going to say that because that's what maybe they've actually had success in that, which you can't discount. But that's their skills and that's their talent. So of course, naturally, that's what they're going to push that as the answer.
Well, yeah. Their skill might be their skill might be modern dance or oboe, but where they get their money from is selling the products. Okay, so you said, it's part of life. People sell certain things, so they'll always tell you they've got the solution. And again, I'm going to say, well, yeah, most of the time I agree. But just notice if you think it has to be that way, because actually I think that question about how would we sell or how would we communicate what we're offering is very tied up with money assumptions. And if the goal of my selling is a money path goal, if the goal is I want a bigger number because that number is my freedom number or that number is my success number, then I'm in the business of chasing a number because of what I think it means. And then I will, maybe I will do or say whatever will make that number bigger. But if my business is something different, and of course I might want money, I like money to come in, you and I both run businesses. But if what I'm really trying to do is maximize, I don't know, truth, or the amount of help I can give people in my lifetime, or the amount I can create beautiful new ideas for people, or whatever it is, if that's what I'm maximizing, which is more of a life-centered kind of business goal. I'm not being stupid about money. I still need to charge. I want people to pay my invoices. I want more clients, but that's not the game. Then actually what I communicate about who you might work with and what my solution is might be a lot more nuanced. I might be willing to do that. I think that's partly another conversation, right? But the reason I said it now is if we come back to all those gurus, right? My marketing system, I've got an AI blah, blah system. I've got this system. And then this will get you money and then you'll get freedom. So that, there might be 10 different people with 10 different fail-safe systems, right? What's the thing they all have in common when they're selling? What links them all? Because it's not the solution they're selling.
It's all about them.
Maybe.
They've
I would,
got,
I mean, there's not a
yeah,
right answer, so I'm being a bit unfair. What I would say, I call it a meta, it's like a meta quality. I'd say it's certainty. It's a lack of complexity. None of them saying, my system's pretty good and it worked for me. And let's have a conversation about whether this system's going to work for you. It might not, it might do, or maybe Joe Bloggs' system, he's selling a different, you know, it's I know and I'm correct and this is certain. Is that
yeah,
fair?
yeah.
And then it gets a bit weird because you've got 10 people telling you totally different solutions, but they all seem certain. It can make you feel confused. Now, why am I saying that? Because this is still about freedom, because if they're selling freedom, if the meta quality is certainty, I'm right, I know my version, my story, my solution is correct, right? There's probably a whole other exploration we could do there about how different people respond to that and why that might piss us off. To me, there's just a lack of nuance. There's a lack of complexity. There's actually a lack of curiosity. But I'm still coming to freedom, so I haven't forgotten. The point is, if the whole way I'm approaching my business, your business, what I need and what you need, tends to lack nuance and complexity, right? Because it's a certain way of thinking. Then when I say it will give you freedom, I'm not going to question it. So it's all part of the same kind of industrial numbers-based mindset. I know your problem. I know how to grow your business. What you want is to grow your business. And when you get this number, you will, it's freedom. I'm going to tell you it's freedom. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not, but there's no curiosity. There's no nuance. And there's no, we call it detective work. There's no conversation where I go, Shabbar, when have you felt free in your life? So that's the first thing I'm trying to say with all of this thing. It's like, notice the atmosphere of certainty. I know you don't, and I can tell you how to do it, what you'll get, and even what it will feel like when you get it. So let me pause there. What do you think about what I said?
I agree with you that there is this, it's almost like this one track, one dimensional kind of approach that's on offer, which is, my way's the best. I'm more concerned about coming from sort of the individual that approaches, and it could be someone like myself, whoever it is. There is this inherent belief in a lot of people, not all the people, that more money, which if you're a business owner, how do you get more money? Generally, it will be through increasing sales, getting in more leads, etc., making your business more profitable, etc. That this pursuit of a higher number will give you this thing that you're after, which is freedom. But there is this mindset around this, which is I guess where I'm sort of coming at it from, especially with my clients, because I don't want to be in that situation where I'm kind of like, financial freedom. Well, isn't it wonderful? Like, this is what we sell. We sell financial freedom.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is that idea of a lack of nuance and a lack of curiosity, it's in the conversation. It's not just the people selling.
Yeah.
It's a strong part of it. And if we're not careful as the people buying or the people making decisions, or even in the conversation, if we're not prepared to pay attention to this stuff, we're all pretending there's something really simple, which is maximize number, get freedom. It's simple, it's monolithic, and it can be effective in some ways. I'm just saying, anyone listening to this, or you, or maybe the sorts of conversations you want to be having around freedom, might want to open up a much more nuanced, curious dialogue, right? So even in this podcast, in this conversation, I'm not here to say money's not going to give you freedom, because that's also a sort of certainty. I'm much more interested in the time we've got left to go, right, if we accept people perceive some sort of relationship between money and freedom, right? Certainly it's out there, and we'd be stupid not to think there's something there. But at the same time, with a very simple investigation, you and I can see, and we'll do this right now, you can see it's not as simple as most people say. Then we can really get into what does it really mean, and what really is freedom, and how does the way I go about money link to that. So the simple observation, there's lots of ways we can do this, and people at home can do this. Do you think people with more money feel more free?
Observations have made me really question that, because like we said, any sort of quality, happiness, joy, anxiety, all of these things, there's people at either end of the money spectrum that will experience. And I think it's the same with freedom. So it's, and that's why I think it's dangerous to start going down this road of that it's an absolute that, money does equal freedom, but there is something that money does give you around this idea of freedom. But I haven't quite sort of encapsulated that. But when we observe, I've got clients who have got a lot of money, but do they feel free? Well, actually, they feel very constrained.
Right. Name some figures. Don't name the clients, but name a figure, because a lot of money might mean very different things to people. So a figure and someone who feels constrained with that amount of money.
Okay, so I've got a client who he's got 10 million approximately just sitting in the bank and generating more and more each year. So that 10 million is in the business. I mean, he won't take it out because of the tax consequences. That's a different.
So, that's a different but also just notice that's also a constraint. That's a psychological constraint. I've got this money. Brackets, of course, I won't take it out to use it, or I'll have to take out only £30 a year or whatever because of tax. That seems like a reality to him, but it's absolute nonsense. What it is a lack of freedom to use the money he has to do whatever's beautiful or joyful or fun in it.
And as soon as you just mentioned that, so the other conversation that happened between me, him and the accountant, this was a few years back, was that the only way to potentially get that money out was through a very convoluted way of him basically becoming non-UK resident, having to go and live in Dubai or somewhere like that, close down the company, and some sort of tax incentive for him to then suddenly have to spend time out of the country. And so it's like, well, all of that money, clearly there's no freedom there, because you can't live where you want to live and do what you want to do. So
and also he doesn't seem free to just go, I'll just pay a wad of tax and then I can take my money and do what the hell I like with it. So that's a beautiful example. 10 million, many people listening to this would go, oh, if I had 10 million, I'd feel free. And maybe they would, right? Who knows? Maybe they would with much less. But actually the detail is I've got it. And then because I'm focusing on the number, not freedom, then I'm worried about the tax, and then would I live here and would I pay that? And it's a constraint. And I'm thinking of several people, I ran a workshop with a billionaire who had a very materially rich life and was a great guy, by the way. I'm not suggesting they had a terrible life or anything. Private jet, all of this stuff. But in terms of kind of relationships with people, it was really tricky because they didn't really feel, is this person want something of me? Do they love me, or do they love my money? So again, there was an obstruction to a freedom in relationship because of the number. And when I go back home, or the people from my old life don't really understand me anymore. So you could say we can work on that, and we can say that's a psychological or a relational challenge. It's arising a bit because of the money, but it's not really about the money. There's somewhere I don't feel free in my life. And someone else I'm coaching right now, quite a young person, they trade crypto and they've made over $10 million. And I think they're still in their 20s, but they're very certain that number needs to probably double before they reach their idea of what freedom would be. Well, whereas many, many people, of any age would say, actually, if I had a tenth of that, I would feel free. So I think it's really good to look at these real examples. So the first step, if we're going to have a more nuanced conversation about freedom, right? Not to say, oh, no, you don't need money to feel free, but nor to say with your number you get to feel free. Then we actually start to go, what is my lived experience of freedom? Where in my life do I feel free? Because often we have areas of life where we feel free, And other areas we feel some constraint. Maybe I feel very free intellectually, but quite constrained in emotions or relationship. Or maybe I feel very free creatively, but very limited in sort of how I deal with money, right? Or something like that. So yeah, where do I feel free in my life? Where do I feel limitation, constraint, pressure, lack of freedom? That would be a great question. And another one I'll throw in and then see where this takes you is not just where. So in my present situation, where does it feel free and where doesn't it? In my life, when did I feel free? I think we talked about this a bit before, and it often comes up on workshops. If you ask people, and anyone listening to this, when did you feel most free in your life? And often it's not when people had the most money. It's often when they had very little money. They say, I was a student, or I was just in my 20s, I was traveling around, I didn't even know where I was going to sleep. And, really precarious in some way day to day. But their sense of just being in the world and free to go out and experience an adventure and try things is often at its peak. So yeah, where do you feel free now, and when have you felt free? And maybe we see what comes there and take it another step or two.
Do you know what? It's really interesting. And just on a side note as well, just before you sort of dived into this, when did you feel free? And I was thinking about the whole money thing. I was like, oh, the thing that everyone is after when they say, more money will give freedom is freedom of time. That's the freedom. And then within about 10 seconds, I just caught myself and say, again, some of my clients with the most money have the least amount of time, so that I can just blow that one out straight away, because that doesn't tally up as a definite.
It's a very seductive illusion.
Yeah.
Again, with influencers and Instagram, and when we see people on their yachts, or in their luxury things, it's very easy to project our own sense of freedom and the capacity to relax and the capacity. We talked last week about Chronos and Kairos, two approaches to time. It's very easy, if I'm not in touch with Kairos, if I'm not in touch with, I could enjoy any moment, like the Zen monks, I could really enjoy my cup of tea. It's just the most amazing experience, right? Like William Blake said, to see the world in a grain of sand and infinity in a flower. So we all have that possibility that anything, like you walking hand in hand with your wife.
I felt, when you said that, was what came to my mind, was walking along the bridge, and I felt there was an element of freedom on that particular day to just roam the streets of London. There was a time constraint, as in what time we had to be back. But in that moment,
it was there.
It was there. So that's quite interesting.
So just anyone who's listening to this who doesn't know what we're talking about, listen to, I think, the previous conversation. We talked in detail about time and quality of enjoyment and how you don't need money. So people think you need money where you get freedom of time. But yeah, the counterexample for some, not for all, is some people with lots of money have no discretionary time, just to notice that, or at least don't feel they have more time than anyone else, or maybe feel pressured in various ways. And then all of us at times in our lives can access something that we really feel kind of free and spacious, and it's not to do with money. So that's a great counterexample. What else comes up with people who are saying this will give you freedom, or I want this number for freedom? What other things do they think they're going to get?
So there's this idea of you get to do what you want when you want. Again, I think just the counter examples are there, that it doesn't always pan out like that, because of the fact that people with lots of money don't get to do what they want when they want. So
can you think of any practical, like actual examples of stories, clients?
Well, the individual that we just spoke about previously in my line of work, who couldn't keep all the money that he wanted and stay in the UK, like he'd have to close down and maybe move away and limit the amount of time that he came back into the UK, in which case is going to miss out on sort of certain family things with his kids and all of this just to protect a number. So, you know, that's clearly not being able to do what you want when you want, because you're having to live on someone else's timescale, you know.
Well, the thing to notice is your client was in fact totally free, as far as I know, completely free to do what he liked with his money, or the only thing is obviously it had to be legal. If he was going to take it out, he'd need to pay tax, right? Now he may have opinions on that. And psychologically, we know that for many people, you know, if my number goes from here to here, that brings up various judgments, evaluations, and maybe anxieties. But actually, most people would perceive, you know, more than most of us, he could do what he liked. Actually, he had the equal right to do what he liked as anybody. The point is, he couldn't do that. I think the second thing is, I would say it's the illusion of freedom of agency or decision making. In other words, if I had, you know, lots of money, I could choose what I did. I'd get to choose. I can go here or here on holiday, or I can work or not work, or etc. So I think there's an illusion of time, an illusion of agency. But we've just seen both sides. Your client wasn't enough in touch with his agency to really feel he could do what he liked, because he had to protect his money. The other example, which can feel shocking, is actually any of us at any time could decide, you know, to go do something else with our lives, head off in a different direction. It definitely feels scary in a particular way if my money number is low. It doesn't mean I can't do it. So we need to distinguish between an experience of fear, which might be very strong, or very profound anxiety, which I respect and, you know, we can work with and acknowledge. But it doesn't actually mean at any point any of us couldn't say, actually, I've decided what I really want to do is this. I'm going to head in this direction. People do that all the time. And this comes back to the life path, which I won't repeat. But this surprising idea that life actually does kind of rise up to support you if you really kind of have the courage of your convictions. So when I say that, I don't want to dismiss, you know, anxiety, fear, the many things that push us against thinking I do have agency. I could actually do this, that, or the other. But I also think it would be a mistake for us to think we don't have agency. What tends to happen, and this is all part of the modern industrial story, the money-centered, number-centered story, is I'm not in touch with my agency. I don't really feel I actually have the freedom to choose my own way fully. And that's deep psychological stuff. Probably when we were kids, we were all, you know, a little bit told off for just wanting what we wanted and doing what we did and heading here. We would say, don't do that, it's not safe, or don't do that, it's rude, or don't do that, it's stupid. So probably all of us are sort of sense of internal compass and the absolute freedom, just, well, you know, fuck it, you're alive, go for who you are and what you want. It gets a bit damaged. And then rather than saying, that's damaged in me, I might need to really go deep and find my courage and work with my fear and my shame. That's much harder for most people than going, oh, well, I don't have the money. That influencer has the money. If I had my 10 million, then I would be free and I'd have freedom of agency and freedom of time. But well, I don't now because I haven't got the money. So that's the projection. And the point is, it's much more convenient to put it on a carrot in the future and either chase it or think I'll never get it, or resent people who I think have got it, than it is to go, well, you know what, we're all humans. We're all limited. We all have to deal with limitation as part of life. And we all have parts of us that are kind of limited that maybe don't need to be, that we could free up. But that's the inner work. Much easier to tie that up with the fantasy of life.
And I think that's what it is. I think it is that denial of our own agency, and then projecting it, you know, onto money, just like we're projecting other sort of insecurities of, you know, fears, anxieties, worries, etc. So what quality, what idea of freedom, because freedom then gets mixed up, is money actually giving us? And I'm just trying to sort of like think of, okay, so what does money give you? Well, money does give you choice, like, because, you know, like we said, you do need money.
Afford more things.
You can afford more things.
And more expensive things.
And I guess
That's
in my
true.
and I guess in my world, when I'm sort of gearing towards retirement, a certain amount of money does give you the option to not work. And I don't know whether that's something that's being sort of tied into this idea of freedom, going to work, giving back time where you could use your time in other
Mm,
pursuits because you're not
mm.
having to work to maintain your lifestyle, but now you have enough, you've got the option of doing something else. So it gives, I'm just thinking
Yeah, I
money
mean,
gives.
I think that's just, I'm wondering with our time whether this maybe becomes a two-parter, because you've opened up a big
Mm,
another question there, and that's about sort of future and the idea of pension and doing what I like with my time. And I think that
mm.
would maybe we do a two-parter,
Yeah,
um,
let's
and we
carry on the
can note that down,
conversation.
because I think that that's not a quick conversation. I'll preempt it by saying, well, always the interesting thing is if what I want to do is charity work or stuff, how do I do as much of that or help people? How do I help people now? Because I might die next year. So
Mm,
if it's important to me that my
yeah.
life's about helping, then the idea that I don't help people now because I'm too busy earning,
Mm,
so that in 10 or 20 or 30 years I'll be able to do it, that certainly doesn't feel like freedom either. It feels like projecting my freedom into the future. So I think we could dive into that more. I think for today, we've maybe highlighted two areas. One is my time would be free. And then for people to think about, when did I really feel free with my time in my life? And where do I feel free in my life now? That would be a great reflection. And the other, this illusion of agency. And I think you said it really well. We've all kind of lost touch, or many people lose touch with agency, and then we project onto money. So a great a great sort of reflection for someone would be, what is it I really want to do that I'm not doing? What would I love to do? What do I have little cheeky visions of or glimpses of doing? And then I'm not doing them. And I say it's either because I don't have the money, or I need to earn the money in order to go off and, have security to do these things. Just to, again, be more nuanced. And one is, where am I scared? Where am I not having agency in my life? Because actually the real answer is I'm scared. I don't want to fail. I don't want to look stupid. And it might be a big thing. It could even be, classic example in a lot of coaching is people don't like to speak up at work. They don't want to challenge things or challenge leaders because they say, well, but then if I get fired and then I lose my job and then I'll end up under a bridge. And you'd be amazed how quickly, if I'm having a conversation, not about money at all, if I'm talking to a leader or somebody about, creativity or innovation or challenging something, how quickly they go from there to I'll end up under a bridge. It can be like less than 10 seconds. And the point
yeah.
is that they're not going to end up on a bridge, but it goes really quickly. I guess the point is, what I think is really happening on those moments isn't about losing my job or not having my salary. It's I'm scared. I'm really scared at suggesting this new thing or challenging this protocol or asking for what I really want. And so I'm going to project my fear into what would happen if I ran out of money. So I think in
Yeah.
terms of the idea money gives me freedom so I can do what I want. Why not try just bringing more do what I want, say what I want, choose what I want now with and
Yeah.
without money? And notice maybe even as I speak, there might be a little bit of anxiety rising. If
Yeah.
there is, that's the interesting work. That's where we get more free. The more I can either be with my anxiety but act anyway, or learn about my anxiety so it has more space and gradually diminishes, I believe that's really where the freedom comes from.
Perfect. Let's wrap up there, and we can pick up next
Yeah,
week maybe on this idea of having an amount of money or building an amount of money that allows you then to not have to work, and giving
yeah,
freedom of time. And I think that comes into the whole sort of planning
yeah.
for retirement, and that could be a whole discussion in itself, which would be quite useful to have. All right, Tim.
All right.
Thanks a lot. I'll see you next time.
Cheers, Shabbar. See you next week. Take care.